Is it insanity to believe that Christian scientism is destined to make the most formidable show that any new religion has made in the world since the birth and spread of Mohammedanism, and that within a century from now it may stand second to Rome only in numbers and power in Christendom? If this is a wild dream, it will not be easy to prove it is so just yet, I think. There seems argument that it may come true. The Christian Science boom is not yet 5 years old, yet already it has 500 churches and 0 members in America. It has its start, you see, and it is a phenomenally good one. Moreover, it is laterally spreading with a constantly accelerating swiftness. It has a better chance to grow and prosper and achieve permanency than any other existing ism, for it has more to offer than any other. The past teaches us that, in order to succeed, a movement like this must not be a mere philosophy, it must be a religion. Also, that it must not claim entire originality but content itself with passing for an improvement on an existing religion and show its hand later when strong and prosperous, like Mohammedanism. Next, there must be money and plenty of it. Next, the power and authority in capital must be concentrated in the grip of a small and irresponsible clique, with nobody outside privileged to ask questions or find fault. Next, as before remarked, it must bait its hook with some new and attractive advantages over the baits offered by the other religions. A new movement equipped with some of these endowments, like spiritualism, for instance, may count upon a considerable success. A new movement equipped with the bulk of them, like Mohammedanism, for instance, may count upon a widely extended conquest. Mormonism had all the requisites but one. It had nothing new and nothing valuable to bait with. And, besides, it appealed to the stupid and the ignorant only. Spiritualism lacked the important detail of concentration of money and authority in the hands of an irresponsible clique. The above equipment is excellent, admirable, powerful, but not perfect. There is yet another detail which is worth the whole of it put together, and more, a detail which has never been joined, in the beginning of a religious movement, to a supremely good working equipment since the world began, until now, a new personage to worship. Christianity had the Savior, but at first and for generations it lacked money and concentrated power. In Mrs. Eddy, Christian Science possesses the new personage for worship, and in addition, here in the very beginning, a working equipment that has not a flaw in it. In the beginning, Mohammedanism had no money, and it has never had anything to offer its client but heaven, nothing here below that was valuable. In addition to heaven hereafter, Christian Science has present health and a cheerful spirit to offer, for cash, and in comparison with this bribe, all other this world bribes are poor and cheap. You recognize that this estimate is admissible, do you not? To whom does Bellamy's nationalism appeal? Necessarily to the few, people who read and dream and are compassionate and troubled for the poor and the hard-driven. To whom does spiritualism appeal? Necessarily to the few. Its boom has lasted for half a century, and I believe it claims short of 4 millions of adherents in America, who are attracted by Swedenborgianism and some of the other fine and delicate isms. The few again, educated people, sensitively organized with superior mental endowments, who seek lofty planes of thought and find their contentment there, and who are attracted by Christian Science. There is no limit, its field is horizonless. Its appeal is as universal as is the appeal of Christianity itself. It appeals to the rich, the poor, the high, the low, the cultured, the ignorant, the gifted, the stupid, the modest, the vain, the wise, the silly, the soldier, the civilian, the hero, the coward, the idler, the worker, the godly, the godless, the freeman, the slave, the adult, the child. They who are ailing, they who have friends that are ailing. To mass it in a phrase, its clientele is the human race. Will it march? I think so. Remember its principal great offer, to rid the race of pain and disease. Can it do it? In large measure, yes. How much of the pain and disease in the world is created by the imaginations of the sufferers, and then kept alive by those same imaginations? 4/5, not anything short of that, I should think. Can Christian Science banish that 4/5? I think so. Can any other organized force do it? None that I know of. Would this be a new world when that was accomplished? And a pleasanter one, for us well people, as well as for those fussy and fretting sick ones? Would it seem as if there was not as much gloomy weather as there used to be? I think so. In the meantime, would the scientist kill off a good many patients? I think so. More than get killed off now by the legalized methods? I will take up that question presently. At present, I wish to ask you to examine some of the scientist's performances, as registered in his magazine. The Christian Science Journal, October number, 1898. First, a Baptist clergyman gives us this true picture of the average Orthodox Christian, and he could have added that it is a true picture of the average, civilized human being. He is a worried and fretted and fearful man, afraid of himself and his propensities, afraid of colds and fevers, afraid of treading on serpents or drinking deadly things. Then he gives us this contrast. The average Christian Scientist has put all anxiety and fretting under his feet. He does have a victory over fear and care that is not achieved by the average Orthodox Christian. He has put all anxiety and fretting under his feet. What proportion of your earnings or income would you be willing to pay for that frame of mind, year in, year out? It really outvalues any price that can be put upon it. Where can you purchase it, at any outlay of any sort, in any church or out of it, except the Scientist's? Well, it is the anxiety and fretting about colds and fevers and drafts, and getting our feet wet, and about forbidden food eaten in terror of indigestion. That brings on the cold and the fever and the indigestion and the most of our other ailments. And so, if the science can banish that anxiety from the world, I think it can reduce the world's disease and pain about 4/5. In this October, number many of the redeemed testify and give thanks, and not coldly, but with passionate gratitude. As a rule, they seem drunk with health, and with the surprise of it, the wonder of it, the unspeakable glory and splendor of it, after a long sober spell spent in inventing imaginary diseases and concreting them with doctor stuff. The first witness testifies that, when this most beautiful truth first dawned on him, he had nearly all the ills that flesh is heir to. That those he did not have he thought he had, and thus made the tale about complete. What was the natural result? Why, he was a dump pit for all the doctors, druggists, and patent medicines of the country. Christian Science came to his help, and the old sick conditions passed away, and along with them the dismal forebodings which he had been accustomed to employ in conjuring up ailments. And so he was a healthy and cheerful man, now, and astonished. But I am not astonished, for from other sources I know what must have been his method of applying Christian Science. If I am in the right, he watchfully and diligently diverted his mind from unhealthy channels and compelled it to travel in healthy ones. Nothing contrivable by human invention could be more formidably effective than that, in banishing imaginary ailments and in closing the entrances against subsequent applicants of their breed. I think his method was to keep saying, I am well, I am sound. Sound and well, well and sound, perfectly well, I have no pain, there's no such thing as pain. I have no disease, there's no such thing as disease. Nothing is real but mind, all is mind, all good, 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 life, soul, liver, bones, one of a series, ante and pass the buck. I do not mean that that was exactly the formula used, but that it doubtless contains the spirit of it. The scientist would attach value to the exact formula, no doubt, and to the religious spirit in which it was used. I should think that any formula that would divert the mind from unwholesome channels and force it into healthy ones would answer every purpose with some people, though not with all. I think it most likely that a very religious man would find the addition of the religious spirit a powerful reinforcement in his case. The second witness testifies that the science banished an old organic trouble, which the doctor and the surgeon had been nursing with drugs and the knife for 7 years. He calls it his claim. A surface miner would think it was not his claim at all, but the property of the doctor and his pal the surgeon, for he would be misled by that word, which is Christian Science slang for ailment. The Christian Scientist has no ailment. To him there is no such thing, and he will not use the lying word. All that happens to him is that upon his attention an imaginary disturbance sometimes obtrudes itself which claims to be an ailment but is. This witness offers testimony for a clergyman 70 years old who had preached 40 years in a Christian church and has not gone over to the new sect. He was almost blind and deaf. He was treated by the CS method, and when he heard the voice of truth, he saw spiritually. Saw spiritually? It is a little indefinite, they had better treat him again. Indefinite testimonies might properly be wastebasketed, since there is evidently no lack of definite ones procurable, but this CS magazine is poorly edited, and so mistakes of this kind must be expected. The next witness is a soldier of the Civil War. When Christian Science found him, he had in stock the following claims: indigestion, rheumatism, catarrh, chalky deposits in shoulder joints, arm joints, hand joints, atrophy of the muscles of arms, shoulders, stiffness of all those joints, insomnia, excruciating pains most of the time. These claims have a very substantial sound. They came of exposure in the campaigns. The doctors did all they could, but it was little. Prayers were tried, but I never realized any physical relief from that source. After 30 years of torture, he went to a Christian Scientist and took an hour's treatment and went home painless. 2 days later, he began to eat like a well man. Then the claims vanished, some at once, others more gradually. Finally, they have almost entirely disappeared. And, a thing which is of still greater value, he is now contented and happy. That is a detail which, as earlier remarked, is a Scientist church specialty. With 31 years' effort, the Methodist Church had not succeeded in furnishing it to this harassed soldier. And so the tale goes on. Witness after witness bulletins his claims, declares their prompt abolishment, and gives Mrs. Eddy's discovery the praise. Milk leg is cured, nervous prostration is cured, consumption is cured, and St. Vitus's dance made a pastime. And now and then an interesting new addition to the science slang appears on the page. We have demonstrations over chilblains and such things. It seems to be a curtailed way of saying demonstrations of the power of Christian Science truth over the fiction which masquerades under the name of chilblains. The children, as well as the adults, share in the blessings of the science. Through the study of the little book, they are learning how to be healthful, peaceful, and wise. Sometimes they are cured of their little claims by the professional healer, and sometimes more advanced children say over the formula and cure themselves. A little far western girl of 9, equipped with an adult vocabulary, states her age and says, "I thought I would write a demonstration to you." She had a claim derived from getting flung over a pony's head and landed on a rock pile. She saved herself from disaster by remember to say, "God is all," while she was in the air. I couldn't have done it. I shouldn't have even thought of it. I should have been too excited. Nothing but Christian Science could have enabled that child to do that calm and thoughtful and judicious thing in those circumstances. She came down on her head, and by all the rules she should have broken it, but the intervention of the formula prevented that, so the only claim resulting was a blackened eye. Monday morning it was still swollen and shut. At school, it hurt pretty bad, that is, it seemed to. So I was excused and went down in the basement and said, "Now I am depending on Mama instead of God, and I will depend on God instead of Mama." No doubt this would have answered, but to make sure she added Mrs. Eddy to the team and recited the scientific statement of being, which is one of the principal incantations, I judge. Then I felt my eye opening. Why, it would have opened an oyster. I think it is one of the touchingest things in child history, that pious little rat down cellar pumping away at the scientific statement of being. There is a page about another good child, little Gordon. Little Gordon came into the world without the assistance of surgery or anesthetics. He was a demonstration, a painless one, therefore his coming evoked joy and thankfulness to God and the discoverer of Christian Science. It is a noticeable feature of this literature, the so frequent linking together of the two beings in an equal bond, also of their two Bibles. When little Gordon was 2 years old, he was playing horse on the bed, where I had left my little book. I noticed him stop in his play, take the book carefully in his little hands, kiss it softly, then look about for the highest place of safety his arms could reach and put it there. This pious act filled the mother with such a train of thought as I had never experienced before. I thought of the sweet mother of long ago who kept things in her heart, etc. It is a bold comparison. However, unconscious profanations are about as common in the mouths of the lay membership of the new church as are frank and open ones in the mouths of its consecrated chiefs. Some days later, the family library, Christian Science books, was lying in a deep-seated window. It was another chance for the holy child to show off. He left his play and went there and pushed all the books to one side except the annex. It he took in both hands, slowly raised it to his lips, then removed it carefully, and seated himself in the window. It had seemed to the mother too wonderful to be true, that first time, but now she was convinced that neither imagination nor accident had anything to do with it. Later, little Gordon let the author of his being see him do it. After that, he did it frequently, probably every time anybody was looking. I would rather have that child than a chromo. If this tale has any object, it is to intimate that the inspired book was supernaturally able to convey a sense of its sacred and awful character to this innocent little creature, without the intervention of outside aids. The magazine is not edited with high-priced discretion. The editor has a claim, and he ought to get it treated. Among other witnesses, there is one who had a jumping toothache, which several times tempted her to believe that there was sensation in matter, but each time it was overcome by the power of truth. She would not allow the dentist to use cocaine, but sat there and let him punch and drill and split and crush the tooth, and tear and slash its ulcerations, and pull out the nerve, and dig out fragments of bone. And she wouldn't once confess that it hurt. And to this day she thinks it didn't, and I have not a doubt that she is 9/10 right, and that her Christian Science faith did her better service than she could have gotten out of cocaine. There is an account of a boy who got broken all up into small bits by an accident, but said over the scientific statement of being, or some of the other incantations, and got well and sound without having suffered any real pain and without the intrusion of a surgeon. I can believe this because my own case was somewhat similar, as per my former article. Also, there is an account of the restoration to perfect health, in a single night of a fatally injured horse, by the application of Christian Science. I can stand a good deal, but I recognize that the ice is getting thin here. That horse had as many as 50 claims. How could he demonstrate over them? Could he do the all good, 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 good gracious, liver, bones, truth, all down but 9, set them up on the other alley? Could he intone the scientific statement of being? Now, could he? Wouldn't it give him a relapse? Let us draw the line at horses. Horses and furniture. There is a plenty of other testimonies in the magazine, but these quoted samples will answer. They show the kind of trade the science is driving. Now we come back to the question, does it kill a patient here and there and now and then? We must concede it. Does it compensate for this? I am persuaded that it can make a plausible showing in that direction. For instance, when it lays its hands upon a soldier who has suffered 30 years of helpless torture and makes him whole in body and mind, what is the actual sum of that achievement? This, I think, that it has restored to life a subject who had essentially died 10 deaths a year for 30 years, and each of them a long and painful one. But for its interference, that man would have essentially died 30 times more, in the 3 years which have since elapsed. There are thousands of young people in the land who are now ready to enter upon a lifelong death, similar to that man's. Every time the science captures one of these and secures to him lifelong immunity from imagination-manufactured disease, it may plausibly claim that in his person it has saved lives. Meantime, it will kill a man every now and then, but no matter, it will still be ahead on the credit side. We consciously declare that Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures was foretold as well as its author, Mary Baker Eddy. In Revelation X, she is the mighty angel, or God's highest thought to this age, verse 1, giving us the spiritual interpretation of the Bible in the little book Open, verse 2. Thus we prove that Christian Science is the second coming of Christ, truth, spirit. Lecture by Dr. George Tompkins, DDCS. There you have it in plain speech. She is the mighty angel. She is the divinely and officially sent bearer of God's highest thought. For the present, she brings the second advent. We must expect that before she has been in her grave 50 years, she will be regarded by her following as having been herself the second advent. She is already worshipped, and we must expect this feeling to spread territorially and also to deepen in intensity, 1. Particularly after her death. For then, as anyone can foresee, Eddy worship will be taught in the Sunday schools and pulpits of the cult. Already whatever she puts her trademark on, though it be only a memorial spoon, is holy and is eagerly and passionately and gratefully bought by the disciple, and becomes a fetish in his house. I say bought, for the Boston Christian Science Trust gives nothing away, everything it has for sale, and the terms are cash, and not cash only but cash in advance. Its God is Mrs. Eddy first, then the dollar. Not a spiritual dollar, but a real one. From end to end of the Christian Science literature, not a single material thing in the world is conceded to be real except the dollar. But all through and through its advertisements, that reality is eagerly and persistently recognized. The hunger of the trust for the dollar, its adoration of the dollar, its lust after the dollar, its ecstasy in the mere thought of the dollar. There has been nothing like it in the world in any age or country. Nothing so coarse, nothing so lubricous, nothing so bestial, except a French novel's attitude towards adultery. The dollar is hunted down in all sorts of ways. The Christian Science Mother Church and Bargain Counter in Boston peddles all kinds of spiritual wares to the faithful, always at extravagant prices, and always on the one condition: cash, cash in advance. The angel of the apocalypse could not go there and get a copy of his own pirated book on credit. Many, many precious Christian Science things are to be had there, for cash: Bible lessons, church manual, CS hymnal, history of the building of the Mother Church, lot of sermons, communion hymn, Saw You My Savior, by Mrs. Eddy, $half a copy, words used by special permission of Mrs. Eddy. Also we have Mrs. Eddy's and the Angel's Little Bible Annex in 8 styles of binding at 8 kinds of war prices. Among these, a sweet thing in Levant, divinity circuit, leather lined to edge, round corners, gold edge, silk sewed, each prepaid $6. And if you take a million, you get them a shilling cheaper, that is to say, prepaid $5.75. Also, we have Mrs. Eddy's miscellaneous writings, at noble big prices, the divinity circuit style heading the extortions, shilling discount where you take an edition. Next comes Christ and Christmas, by the fertile Mrs. Eddy, a poem, I would God I could see it, price $3, cash in advance. Then follow 5 more books by Mrs. Eddy at highwaymen's rates, as usual, some of them in leatherette covers, some of them in pebbled cloth, with divinity circuit, compensation balance, twin screw, and the other modern improvements. And at the same bargain counter can be had the Christian Science Journal. I wish it were in refined taste to apply a rudely and ruggedly descriptive epithet to that literary slush bucket, so as to give one an accurate idea of what it is like. I am moved to do it, but I must not. It is better to be refined than accurate when one is talking about a production like that. Christian Science Literary Oleomargarine is a monopoly of the Mother Church headquarters factory in Boston, none genuine without the trademark of the trust. You must apply there and not elsewhere, and you pay your money before you get your soap fat. The trust has still other sources of income. Mrs. Eddy is president and perhaps proprietor of the Trust's Metaphysical College in Boston, where the student who has practiced CS healing during 3 years the best he knew how perfects himself in the game by a 2 weeks course and pays $100 for it. And I have a case among my statistics where the student had a 3 weeks course and paid $300 for it. The trust does love the dollar when it isn't a spiritual one. In order to force the sale of Mrs. Eddy's Bible Annex, no healer, metaphysical college bred or other, is allowed to practice the game unless he possess a copy of that holy nightmare. That means a large and constantly augmenting income for the trust. No CS family would consider itself loyal or pious or pain-proof without an annex or two in the house. That means an income for the trust in the near future of millions, not thousands, millions a year. No member, young or old, of a Christian Scientist church can retain that membership unless he pay capitation tax to the Boston Trust every year. That means an income for the trust in the near future of millions more per year. It is a reasonably safe guess that in America in 1910, there will be 10 million Christian Scientists, and 0 in Great Britain, that these figures will be trebled by 1920. That in America in 1910, the Christian Scientists will be a political force, in 1920 politically formidable, to remain that permanently. And I think it a reasonable guess that the trust, which is already in our day pretty brusque in its ways, will then be the most insolent and unscrupulous and tyrannical politico, religious master that has dominated a people since the palmy days of the Inquisition, and a stronger master than the strongest of bygone times, because this one will have a financial strength not dreamed of by any predecessor, as effective a concentration of irresponsible power as any predecessor had. In the railway, the telegraph, and the subsidized newspaper, better facilities for watching and managing his empire than any predecessor has had. And after a generation or two, he will probably divide Christendom with the Catholic Church. The Roman Church has a perfect organization, and it has an effective centralization of power, but not of its cash. Its multitude of bishops are rich, but their riches remain in large measure in their own hands. They collect zero of people, but they keep the bulk of the result at home. The Boston Pope of By will draw his dollar-a-head capitation tax zero of the human race, and the annex and the rest of his bookshop will fetch in double as much more. And his metaphysical colleges, the annual pilgrimage to Mrs. Eddy's tomb from all over the world. Admission, the Christian Science dollar, payable in advance. Purchases of consecrated glass beads, candles, memorial spoons, aureoled chromo portraits, and bogus autographs of Mrs. Eddy, cash offerings at her shrine. No crutches of cured cripples received, and no imitations of miraculously restored broken legs and necks allowed to be hung up except when made out of the holy metal and proved by fire assay. Cash for miracles worked at the tomb. These money sources, with 1,000 to be yet invented and ambushed upon the devotee, will bring the annual increment well up above $1 billion, and nobody but the trust will have the handling of it. No bishops appointed unless they agree to hand in 90% of the catch. In that day, the trust will monopolize the manufacture and sale of the Old and New Testaments as well as the annex, and raise their price to annex rates, and compel the devotee to buy, for even today a healer has to have the annex and the scriptures, or he is not allowed to work the game. and that will bring several $100 million more. In those days, the trust will have an income approaching $5 million a day and no expenses to be taken out of it, no taxes to pay, and no charities to support. That last detail should not be lightly passed over by the reader. It is well entitled to attention. No charities to support. No, nor even to contribute to. One searches in vain the trust advertisements and the utterances of its pulpit for any suggestion that it spends a penny on orphans, widows, discharged prisoners, hospitals, ragged schools, night missions, city missions, foreign missions, libraries, old people's homes, or any other object that appeals to a human being's purse through his heart. 2. I have hunted, hunted, and hunted, by correspondence and otherwise, and have not yet got upon the track of a farthing that the trust has spent upon any worthy object. Nothing makes a scientist so uncomfortable as to ask him if he knows of a case where Christian Science has spent money on a benevolence, either among its own adherents or elsewhere. He is obliged to say no. And then one discovers that the person questioned has been asked the question many times before, and that it is getting to be a sore subject with him. Why a sore subject? Because he has written his chiefs and asked with high confidence for an answer that will confound these questioners, and the chiefs did not reply. He has written again and then again, not with confidence but humbly now, and has begged for defensive ammunition in the voice of supplication. A reply does at last come to this effect: we must have faith in our mother and rest content in the conviction that whatever she does with the money it is in accordance with orders from heaven, for she does no act of any kind without first demonstrating over it. That settles it as far as the disciple is concerned. His mind is entirely satisfied with that answer. He gets down his annex and does an incantation or two, and that mesmerizes his spirit and puts that to sleep, brings it peace. Peace and comfort and joy, until some inquirer punctures the old sore again. Through friends in America, I asked some questions, and in some cases got definite and informing answers. In other cases, the answers were not definite and not valuable. From the definite answers, I gather that the capitation tax is compulsory and that the sum is $1. To the question, does any of the money go to charities? The answer from an authoritative source was, no, not in the sense usually conveyed by this word. The italics are mine. That answer is cautious, but definite, I think utterly and unassailably definite, although quite Christian scientifically foggy in its phrasing. Christian Science is generally foggy, generally diffuse, generally garrulous. The writer was aware that the first word in his phrase answered the question which I was asking, but he could not help adding 9 dark words, meaningless ones unless explained by him. It is quite likely, as intimated by him, that Christian Science has invented a new class of objects to apply the word charity to, but without an explanation, we cannot know what they are. We quite easily and naturally and confidently guess that they are in all cases objects which will return 500% on the trust's investment in them, but guessing is not knowledge. It is merely, in this case, a sort of 9/10 certainty deducible from what we think we know of the trust's trade principles and its sly and furtive and shifty ways. Sly, deep, judicious? The trust understands business. The trust does not give itself away. It defeats all the attempts of us impertinents to get at its trade secrets. To this day, after all our diligence, we have not been able to get it to confess what it does with the money. It does not even let its own disciples find out. All it says is that the matter has been demonstrated over. Now and then a lay scientist says, with a grateful exultation, that Mrs. Eddy is enormously rich, but he stops there. As to whether any of the money goes to other charities or not, he is obliged to admit that he does not know. However, the trust is composed of human beings, and this justifies the conjecture that if it had a charity on its list which it did not need to blush for, we should soon hear of it. Without money and without price. Those used to be the terms. Mrs. Eddy's annex cancels them. The motto of Christian Science is, the laborer is worthy of his hire. And now that it has been demonstrated over, we find its spiritual meaning to be, do anything and everything your hand may find to do, and charge cash for it, and collect the money in advance. The scientist has on his tongues and a cut-and-dried, Boston-supplied set of rather lean arguments whose function is to show that it is a heaven-commanded duty to do this, and that the croupiers of the game have no choice but to obey. The trust seems to be a reincarnation. Exodus Roman 32:4. I have no reverence for Mrs. Eddy and the rest of the trust, if there is a rest, but I am not lacking in reverence for the sincerities of the lay membership of the new church. There is every evidence that the lay members are entirely sincere in their faith, and I think sincerity is always entitled to honor and respect. Let the inspiration of the sincerity be what it may. Zeal and sincerity can carry a new religion further than any other missionary except fire and sword, and I believe that the new religion will conquer the half of Christendom in 100 years. I am not intending this as a compliment to the human race, I am merely stating an opinion. And yet I think that perhaps it is a compliment to the race. I keep in mind that saying of an Orthodox preacher, quoted further back. He conceded that this new Christianity frees its possessor's life from frets, fears, vexations, bitterness, and all sorts of imagination-propagated maladies and pains, and fills his world with sunshine and his heart with gladness. If Christian Science, with this stupendous equipment, and final salvation added, cannot win half the Christian globe, I must be badly mistaken in the makeup of the human race. I think the trust will be handed down like the other papacy, and will always know how to handle its limitless cash. It will press the button. The zeal, the energy, the sincerity, the enthusiasm of its countless vassals will do the rest. The power which a man's imagination has over his body to heal it or make it sick is a force which none of us is born without. The first man had it, the last one will possess it. If left to himself, a man is most likely to use only the mischievous half of the force, the half which invents imaginary ailments for him and cultivates them. And if he is one of these very wise people, he is quite likely to scoff at the beneficent half of the force and deny its existence. And so, to heal or help that man, two imaginations are required, his own and some outsiders. The outsider, B, must imagine that his incantations are the healing power that is curing A, and A must imagine that this is so. It is not so at all, but no matter, the cure is effected, and that is the main thing. The outsider's work is unquestionably valuable, so valuable that it may fairly be likened to the essential work performed by the engineer when he handles the throttle and turns on the steam. The actual power is lodged exclusively in the engine, but if the engine were left alone, it would never start of itself. Whether the engineer be named Jim, or Bob, or Tom, it is all one. His services are necessary, and he is entitled to such wage as he can get you to pay. Whether he be named Christian Scientist, or mental scientist, or mind curist, or lured miracle worker, or King's evil expert, it is all one. He is merely the engineer. He simply turns on the same old steam, and the engine does the whole work. In the case of the cure engine, it is a distinct advantage to clothe the engineer in religious overalls and give him a pious name. It greatly enlarges the business and does no one any harm. The Christian Scientist engineer drives exactly the same trade as the other engineers, yet he outprospers the whole of them put together. Is it because he has captured the tackingest name? I think that that is only a small part of it. I think that the secret of his high prosperity lies elsewhere. The Christian Scientist has organized the business. Now that was certainly a gigantic idea. There is more intellect in it than would be needed in the invention of a couple of millions of Eddy Science and Health Bible annexes. Electricity, in limitless volume, has existed in the air and the rocks and the earth and everywhere since time began, and was going to waste all the while. In our time, we have organized that scattered and wandering force and set it to work, and backed the business with capital, and concentrated it in few and competent hands, and the results are as we see. The Christian Scientist has taken a force which has been lying idle in every member of the human race since time began, and has organized it, and backed the business with capital, and concentrated it at Boston headquarters in the hands of a small and very competent trust, and there are results. Therein lies the promise that this monopoly is going to extend its commerce wide in the earth. I think that if the business were conducted in the loose and disconnected fashion customary with such things, it would achieve but little more than the modest prosperity usually secured by unorganized great moral and commercial ventures. But I believe that so long as this one remains compactly organized and closely concentrated in a trust, the spread of its dominion will continue. Chapter 6, Enna, May 1, 1899. 1. After raising a dead child to life, the disciple who did it writes an account of her performance to Mrs. Eddy and closes it thus: "My prayer daily is to be more spiritual, that I may do more as you would have me do. And may we all love you more and so live it that the world may know that the Christ is come." Printed in the Concord and H. Independent Statesman, March 9, 1899. If this is no worship, it is a good imitation of it. 2. In the past 2 years, the membership of the Established Church of England have given voluntary contributions amounting to $73 million to the church's benevolent enterprises. Churches that give have nothing to hide. 3. I may be introducing the capital S a little early, still it is on its way.